This is a 50mm 1.8 Canon lens that was probably made in the 80s, maybe. But I bought this on eBay a really long time ago, and I never used it. The mounting adapter that I bought for my previous cameras, it did not work. So I'm very surprised to see that this is working. This is looking bokeh-y and blurry, at least on the little screen. It's hard to tell. But I just wanted to see what video looks like on this thing, and if it looks crispy and clean. I may play around with the 2.8 35mm as well. But the long and short is, a $50 lens that I bought years ago that's been sitting in a box. I got it working with my modernish camera equipment, and yeah, I'm gonna make some observations when I switch the lenses to the 35mm. Okay, I am back, and I am using an old 35mm lens, again, that I purchased on eBay. This is a Canon 35mm 2.8 lens. It's all manual. So this one is definitely looking a little beat up. But I think it's working okay. I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like when I pump it over to the computer and see it on a full screen monitor. Now it's interesting with this one, I guess because it's a little bit more pushed back. The autofocus on the Sony camera is at least identifying a box around my head. I think the 50mm at arm's length, and this is as far as my arm will go back. You know, manual lenses, they're fun to play with. I looked back at my eBay purchasing history, and actually I bought these lenses so long ago that they weren't even available to find, but I found the emails, the confirmation emails. And I bought both of these lenses. One was $55 and one was $54. I attempted to use these lenses on a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds lens. I bought an adapter, and it was like a $15 adapter, and it didn't work. These lenses, both of them, these Canon FD lenses, that's I guess the type. They're an FD lens. They have these really gnarly mechanisms in the back, these mounting mechanisms. So there's like these metal pieces that stick out, and the mounting adapters, even the covers, the lens protectors, you got to mess with them to get them to seal and to snap in. And there's a little metal button on the lenses that I guess you also have to push down so they can turn and lock. So definitely there's mechanical pieces to mount these lenses, and they're unforgiving in these metal pieces. And the Micro Four Thirds adapter that I had purchased, they would not sit flush, so they wouldn't lock on the adapter side, and which means I couldn't get them on the camera. One of the things that I mentioned on the other video was just the nature of these lenses. If you'll see here, right, there is a button that's a release, and if you see here, you can see the hooks, right? So there's kind of some gnarly, there are some gnarly parts to this. You're seeing these hooks over here, right? And even when you try to put the cap back on, it you have to kind of put it in, and you have to hit this button to get it to close. So they're very unforgiving as far as mounting goes, and I could see how a mounting solution would be difficult for these. So, but again, you see it kind of stuck. It kind of stuck when I popped it off. There's a lot of hooks on here. There's a lot of hooks. They're mean. They're mean little hooks. And make sure you do have a conversion or a mounting ring here, because you can really jack up your new camera. These little hooks in here can ruin the sensor. So don't mistake your lenses. Right there, there's the cap, and the other one works the same way. This 50mm is a little bit, maybe the hooks are a little bit more banged up, but I wanted to show this. I wanted to show this, and I also wanted to use the camera, because again, typically when I'm doing product reviews, which is not often, but you know, when I hold things up to the camera, the autofocus goes nuts. And as I mentioned before, I don't really like to mess with the rings or mess with the autofocus when I'm usually filming, especially when I'm filming myself. So But this was nice. It was nice to be able to control it yourself, right? And again, you could do that with a modern lens too, but you're forced to do it here. So, yeah, I'm curious to see when I look at this video if this looks any sharper. But again, this is an old lens. From what I can see, it looks pretty nice. But again, I wanted to be further away from the camera. Again, I wanted to be further away from the camera to see if it was better and if it looks sharper further away. Manual lenses are hard. Manual lenses for photography or whatever, right? I was trying to take pictures of the dog. I'll put them on there. And she was moving not even very fast, but you lose your focus, right? So the newer cameras with the lenses that do the autofocusing, it makes you a lazy photographer. These older lenses where you have to do the manual focusing, it obviously makes you a much better photographer, or at least you have to develop more patience and skills, right? Even now, like you can see, I'm shaking my hand, right? Because I'm just trying to kind of keep this out, and this is really, really shaky because there's no auto stabilization. So modern technology really does hide a lot of imperfections and makes anybody a much better photographer than they probably have any right to be. For the old-fashioned glass is not forgiving. But yeah, I'm gonna try to take some more pictures outside. I tried to get my son to be an unwilling model, and he blew me off. And my wife doesn't like when I take pictures of her and post them on the internet, but I have a couple, which we'll show right now. It's also blurry. See, I don't know how anybody could do vlogging without a autofocus here. I didn't jack the aperture ring all the way to 22. This goes to 22. So this goes from 2.8 to 22. But it's somewhere in the middle. What I'll also say about this, I mentioned this before in the other video, it does not have a smooth ring for aperture. It's tactile, so if you're filming video, that's going to be a nightmare to change that on the fly. So the other piece is that this camera right now is on a tripod because it was so shaky before. It's not a smooth ring for the aperture. Now the focus ring, I'm going to put myself out of focus. This is cranked all the way over. So I could see that, like how if you were trying to do something artistically, you would, right, you can kind of fade into focus. You know, that would be, that's nice, right? It's something that I don't ever use. I don't ever touch the lens when I'm filming. I don't ever do that. And I don't think I'd like to do that during video making. Having taken some photographs with this camera and with this lens, different conversation, I think it could get really interesting if you have immediate access to the aperture and to the focus settings. That's not to say that you can't do that with modern lenses. You certainly have the ability to do so, but with the old lenses, you don't have a choice. You have to do it. On this Sony, there was a setting in the camera settings that I had to turn on. I'll post it in text while I'm talking right here. The camera wouldn't work until this was activated or maybe shut off, but something had to be changed in order for this lens to allow me to take the pictures. I could see the picture when I snapped it on, but an alert came up on the Sony. This is a Sony 5100, right? So again, it's a cropped sensor, APS-C. So it came up. So I haven't put this on my full frame Sony A7C. So I'm just playing around with this one. It's nice that these lenses, that they work. And it's kind of cool that this adapter, this relatively inexpensive adapter, although it was more expensive than the $15 one, it was just 37 bucks, and it works. It seems to be working, and I'm really curious to see what the byproduct would be. I'm trying to play around with these, so I use them. I'm going to try to use them around the house, and there's a nature preserve up the street from my house. I might go take this camera out. And like take some pictures of birds. Like not a great, these lenses are not great for that because it's 35 and 50 millimeters, so they're primes. So no zoom, and they're fairly, like again, they're portrait lenses. The 50 at least is a portrait lens. The 35 is kind of wide, but again, because of the crop sensor math, it's 1.5 times. It's 1.5 times 35, so it's like 17 and a half plus 35. So like, yeah, it's past 50. So this is really like the 50 millimeter that I have, because the 50 is really closer to 75. I hate crop sensor math. I hate micro four thirds math. It's annoying. And when I bought these things, I had no idea what any of that meant. So, but yeah, let's see how all this stuff looks. But old lenses, adapters, fun.